What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast. This is episode 34 we're doing today. I'm Danny. I'm here with my buddy Randy.
Hey, Danny.
Hey, Randy. And today we're going to talk about spinning your wheels, how to get unstuck. And I think, Randy and I both felt kind of this recently, but, why is this an issue? I guess we should start with.
For me personally, sometimes, especially recently, I've gotten to the point where because I'm self-employed. So to get things done, I have to kind of do it myself. And I just kind of changed like everything that I was doing. So the routines that I had previously that allowed me to like kind of track where I was and build momentum and things like that are no longer here. And so it, even though at least I think I'm doing the things I want to do, I still don't know every day that I'm getting anything done. Like that's the hardest thing. I feel like I'm not getting anything done.
Yeah, that's interesting too. They mentioned that about being like, self-employed. Really, I think anything where you work on your own, it's that's always difficult because you really have you don't have anybody else giving you deadlines or giving you, projects and stuff. So it's like, since it's your own design, it's like, well, could I have done more? Should I have done more? Right? Is this enough? I have no idea. And
And
like,
plus
you
you can't even count on the clock. You can't be like, well, I was there from 9 to 5, so it
yeah,
counts.
that counts. Yeah, right. It's sold. We're good. Yeah, it's funny. It's like you get in this system and then you have, and moving always makes it hard too, because you get out of like your norm, right? And our norm is, if we have good routines and if we have a good setup, it's funny how much a move can shake all that and just throw it off. And I think for
Hmm.
myself, I mean, it's sort of similar. Like I've been, things have been progressing, I think, better for me, and I've been doing the things that I want to do. But at the same time, it's like, I still feel like so often that like I don't know where I should be, and I think that is part of it. Like I don't know where, like I know what I want, but I don't know what the goal should be for, say, day to day, or maybe, week to week or whatever. And even when I have one written down, sometimes I'm not even sure if it's right because it's self-created, right? So it's like I don't know if it's like, should it be more, should it be less? How do you balance your life and also feel like you're making progress forward and not feeling stuck? Because feeling stuck sucks.
Yeah. And I think we should also address the invisible elephant too, because, it's oftentimes it's just like when we're in a low mood where we feel like we need to do more. And then all of a sudden we analyze it in that low mood. Like I know that for myself for a fact. Like
Yeah.
when I don't feel good, I'm like, why am I not doing more? Why, all that stuff. So like maybe because, looking at it on a grand scale, I'm not doing that much differently than what I was doing before. Arguably, could be said I'm doing more, but it just feels like less. It feels not enough.
Well, it's funny. I think, yeah, you made a good point. In your case too, I think, you transitioned, so you lost one job that you were going to every day, which also that probably made you feel like you're doing less just because you don't have the hours there. But that wasn't ultimately helping you anyway to get to where you want to go. So got to factor that in. But I think you're right too, right? When we feel down, and I know I do this myself all the time, it's like I'm equal part bitch and like also just like really hard on myself, for no reason. Like, and it's like it's such a bad system too, because you get, when you feel down, you like, you berate yourself, but that's not going to motivate you really. That doesn't help you. That just makes you feel worse. It's like a pity party, right? Or something like that, where you just make yourself feel worse and it doesn't actually get anything moving. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure a lot of people feel stuck right now too, because we've been in this unending fucking, dude, it's been over a year now, right? I mean, this is at least for the US especially, I know it's been over a year, and pretty much everywhere it's like things don't seem to be ending. And not that they would ever return to normal, because I think that's a misnomer, but with COVID, with the pandemic, there was this thought that it would return to something beyond lockdown. And it's like we still haven't really gotten out of it. And I think that's been affecting a lot of people too, because it's hard to feel like, I was just saying this to somebody the other day. It's like the days sometimes, like it's so hard to tell and differentiate one day from another because it's like the same thing over and over. You don't go anywhere, you do the same things. It's like walk the dog twice, do this, work, blah, blah. It's like I can't even remember what I did on a specific day because it's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. But, maybe that is what it ought to be though. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm struggling with right now is like, am I just expecting it to be something other than what it is? Or is it something where I actually need to do more? And yeah, so
Yeah,
that's the difficulty.
that is a difficulty though, right? I mean,
That
no,
whole meta thought. Mm.
yeah, like should I be doing more? Am I not really getting done enough each day or what I want to get done? And it's funny, like routines are good and they can be really valuable, I think, for progressing and getting things done. And I'm a big believer that you have to have like time set in your routine too for like, doing things for yourself and taking time for yourself essentially. But it's funny because those routines, I mean, can they be also detrimental sometimes by because you get so used to doing, say, the same amount of work, the same amount of stuff, that maybe you're not doing more to get to where you want to be when where you want to be requires more work. Or does it? I mean,
Hmm.
this is the issue. It's really a difficult question.
So we always talk about how writing stuff down helps. Putting stuff on pencil and paper definitely helps the mind think. For setting goals, you're like 40% more likely to accomplish them. One thing that I've done historically that's been helpful when I feel stuck, and oftentimes I feel stuck around the same time that I feel overwhelmed. And
Hmm.
so, one thing that I'll do is write down everything that I'm working on. Because, like in your mind, it's easy to say, like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. But the mind can only hold seven things actively. And I remember doing this one time when I was feeling really overwhelmed and I wrote like 60 things that I was working on. And these were all things that I was like legitimately working on. And I was like,
Yeah,
well, no
yeah.
wonder you feel stuck. My goodness.
Yeah, how can you, if you're doing, I mean, if you're working on 60 things, the effective progress you're going to make a day is so limited because it's just too much stuff. And I think, to your point too, I think it's important when if you do make a list like that to also include things that aren't just work related, but stuff you're working on. Like if you're working on yourself, if you're doing, exercising and stuff, including that because that adds to your day, right? It also adds to what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, especially if it's important. But yeah, it adds up. I mean, you can only do so much. And I think that's a good idea too, though, writing it down. It's funny, you just mentioned being overwhelmed, right? I think being overwhelmed, stressed, feeling down, all of these like negative things are often associated with being stuck, right? And feeling stuck. Because I think it's like we get to a point where either maybe we feel like we should have crossed some, plateau at this point, or, we should have done something else and it hasn't happened yet. And that starts to sort of snowball into this feeling and stress and anxiety about
Mm-hmm. And also
it.
admitting that being stuck is okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's totally
Yeah.
cool. I mean, it's kind of like the seasons of life or the cycles of life. Like there are ups, there are downs, there are sideways. And it's just like, sometimes things are going great, sometimes they're not. Sometimes you're making great progress, sometimes you're stuck. And it's just like, but it's like the fighting it, like what you resist persists. So it's the fighting it that just kind of keeps us there.
Well, it's funny. We were talking about stoicism last week, and we do a lot on this podcast. And I think it's funny
Wait,
that
we talk about stoicism on this
sometimes,
podcast?
yeah, once in a while, I think we do. We mention it occasionally, I think. But like, it's funny because I was thinking about this yesterday because in a similar situation, and like, that whole idea that we should focus on what we have control of, which is like a simple notion, right? That we can put a lot of effort in, but we can't control what's going to happen ultimately. So even if we do everything right, things might not work out. Even if we do, everything we're supposed to, we still might not get to some end because of outside factors that we have no control over. And we need to accept that, right? Accept that we're doing our part and that's what matters, right? We have agency, we have control. And it's funny because I was also thinking at the same time of like the existentialists and like the other flip side too, which is like, their viewpoint that, all of this is meaningless, it's absurd. And if we have to create meaning, then at the end of the day, like literally what we do doesn't matter. It only matters to us. And when you think about those two together, I think it's funny because it really reminds you to kind of slow down sometimes and reassess and look at it with a different perspective. Like, why am I so stressed? And why am I so anxious or worried about this? And you're right, because as soon as you start thinking that way, you just make it into something that lingers and sticks with you and becomes worse. It's like our own mind creates the problems
Mm-hmm.
to deal with.
Yeah, it's really crazy because like, you know, oftentimes with meditation and with Buddhism, they always talk about the power of now and Eckhart Tolle and all that stuff. But like literally, like right now, everything is totally fine. But it's like this thinking about the future and what's going to happen. What about this? And what if that happens? And what about that? But right now, everything's fine. Everything's totally fine. Actually, everything's better than fine. I have more than enough. I have more than I could ever need. I actually have too much stuff to do. But it's like, but what about that? And what about this? And how do I plan for this? And how do I plan for that?
Yeah, it's funny too because you just mentioned, right, like having like it's good to be busy. It is good to be busy. It's good to have stuff to do, and like there is that difficulty of finding a balance and not over doing it, or where we run into that problem. But and then the other issue of just being recognizing that like if you are doing okay, you're doing okay, right? You're alive. You're sitting. You're doing whatever you're doing. You're able to do your work. As long as you're alive, you can always pursue something else. You can always make changes. You can always try something new. It's like, but we forget that when we look at the future, this imagined future, right? Of what's going to happen and how we're not going to make ends meet or whatever, and how things are going to snowball. And it is funny. It's like this whole like mind game you have to play with yourself. It feels like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because, and maybe that is it. Maybe it is like we see that a lot of these philosophies provide a lot of value in helping us sort of gain perspective, but at the same time, it's like you're fighting the social world that has also told you all these things about success and what it means to be a good person and all this stuff that really like is in opposition to those ideas in a lot of ways, I think. Especially
Mm-hmm.
like like productivity and like notions of like success and succeeding, and especially in like the capitalistic world are insane sometimes.
Okay, so you just made me think of something. Like I was thinking of the book that we just read, Being Better Stoicism for a World Worth Living In. And it begins with a story of, I think it was Zeno who was
Yeah.
shipwrecked. Okay. So like here I am feeling stuck because I'm focusing on these like business successes. Meanwhile, I'm not paying any attention to my character. And that's like the only thing of any importance whatsoever is character. It's just like
Well, it's funny though, right? Because it's like I think that's why I was just putting together a course that I'm teaching over the summer, and it's funny because it's ethics and like I think that's why so many people struggle with it. Is like ethics really is all about you, right? It's about being a good person. That's the goal, just to be a good person, and whatever that, however you interpret that, whatever. But it's not. We make it sound easy, but it's not easy. But then it's like everything else that we feel is so important is all the stuff that really takes us away from that. And it's like it's a hard thing, I think, to find a balance between being able to live your life, pursue the things you want, but also build character and focus on that and make it a part of your day. Because it is crucial. I think, if you don't focus on yourself, you know, what is it? Kierkegaard says, right? You can win the whole world and lose yourself, right? Because you could do everything you want, but you might not know who you are, or you might be a shitty person in the end. And,
mhm,
ultimately, it's great that you did all this stuff in the world, but it didn't really mean anything, and I
mhm.
think that it's interesting to think that way because it's hard how we find that balance between, you know, cultivating self and also trying to live in the world that we live
Yeah. I'm just finishing the first Brandon Sanderson book, The Way of Kings, and
in.
I kind of, and
It's long,
it
right?
kind oh yeah, it's
It's good,
long.
but it's
And
good.
in the end, when there's a situation where one of the guys was saying the same exact thing. Where like, it's not the fortune that matters, it's not the fame, it's not those things. It's actually your character, who you are, and are you happy with who you are?
Well, yeah, it's funny, right? Like, I mean, every ancient philosopher pretty much talks about that. Like the idea that, basically all the things that we can, and I mean, contemporary ones too, I should say, right? All the stuff we can get in the world, intelligence, health, wealth, success, all that stuff, it's only valuable insofar as the person has good character or is a good person, right? Because they'll determine it. If you're a terrible person and you have wild success in business, you're going to have no problem hurting people, doing terrible things, polluting the environment, doing all this stuff to make more money because of greed, right? If you have good character, that will play out very differently because those sorts of things you'll find ways to do it that aren't so maybe not so quick, but will also help others or do things that are better. And it's like that ultimately, in the end of the day, seems to be the only thing that matters because we don't take anything with us when we die. You know, a mask all you want, it stays here. I mean, the
I
Egyptians
remember those.
tried, right?
What was that brand? No Fear when we were kids.
Yeah,
I still
yeah,
remember I wanted this shirt. It was a black No Fear shirt that said, "He who dies with the most toys still dies."
yeah, yeah. They had some good ones. They were funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
So,
like, I think that's part of the issue, right? What do you like? People even talk about like leaving a legacy, but you don't know if you fucking left a legacy, right?
mhm.
I mean, you have an idea, but it might evaporate that day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. So, like, oftentimes when I'm stuck with problems, I try and imagine what it's going to be like on my deathbed. And, on my deathbed, yeah, maybe I want to leave a legacy, but more likely I'll be asking, did I live a life that I'm proud of? Like, did I live the best life that I'm capable of? Was I a good person? Did I make the world better because I was here?
Yeah, and I
And
think
so,
those are fair questions, right? Like that's yeah.
yeah,
I mean, are you going to ask yourself, "Oh, I made this much money, thank God." When you're dying, like who cares, right? I mean, it doesn't matter at that point. Like it's great if you can do something with it, but it's funny. It's like, and I think that's why the emphasis on being a good person is so important because you can sleep with yourself, so to say, right? Or you can, at the end, you won't look back and wonder. You'll know you had good relationships with people, you spent time with them, you saw them, you did the things that mattered to you. But I think this is also what's difficult is that, for all of us, is that, it comes down to then knowing what we really value in life, what ultimately has value versus what has apparent value because we're told it has value, and really focusing on those things that have real value as we see it, right? So, and that's difficult. I think everybody struggles with that. It's not easy.
yeah. So I'm trying to think of kind of like an exercise that I can do myself when we're done talking here to kind of, I think we kind of touched on a whole bunch of points here. So like one would be writing down everything that I'm doing so that I can get it out of my mind and onto a sheet of paper. Another thing would be prioritizing. And like I always like how there was some military person who said, there's three categories for prioritization: A, B, and C. A is the most important, B is important or middle, and then C is the least important. And he's like, I think it was a she actually. She was like, prioritize everything A, B, and C, and then throw out C. And so I really think I need to do that. So that's
Well,
what I'm going to be working on.
I know for a lot of people too that works because when you prioritize that way, if I remember correctly, C tends to be both not as important overall, but also easy. And we tend to focus on those to make ourselves feel like we're progressing when in fact we're really just spinning our wheels, right? You're just doing random shit. It's like, it's like you always run into this when people are working on like papers and stuff when they do research, they'll like over research because they feel like they're doing something, but in reality they're just kind of procrastinating. And like they're learning more, it's great, whatever, but like they're not getting the work done, right? And I think that's interesting. That's a good way to look at it. I think with that too, not only prioritizing like what you have to do, but also really maybe writing down like trying to start to write down like maybe the top 3 or 5 things that matter to you in life. Like if I had to write down things that I thought really had value, what would they be?
Mm.
Is it the development of character? You know, um, is it, being successful in what I'm doing? Is it, and trying to sort of get that prioritized as well. So you have kind of a guide of almost like a value guide to look at.
Yeah, that whole developing character thing, man, that makes me grit my teeth.
I know, right?
Because it's always difficult. Always
It
difficult.
is. It is very difficult. Well, it's difficult too because I think we talked about this, I think, before, but like, people, a lot of times we don't really think about how hard it is and how much effort it takes. Like to always think these, to always be mindful of it and to try and again, I mean, look, I don't want to say nobody has to be an expert day one either. You're gonna, if you're trying to work on your character, that's great because at least you're trying. And you're gonna have failures every day and successes every day. And part of it is just that you keep doing it and presumably you get better, right? But it's
Mhm.
hard to always stop and remind yourself, like, oh wait, I need to do think this way, or I need to, present myself, whatever. And it's difficult to think through all those problems. It really is. Yeah, fucking character. Why can't we all
Whew,
just be
yeah,
good?
yeah, yeah. Right. That's the whole pig satisfied or man dissatisfied. Whew.
Yeah,
Oh.
but I think those are good ideas. What else would you recommend for people trying to get going though, from a place of feeling stuck?
Yeah. So, like, I always think of momentum. So you know how, like, for instance, a rocket ship to leave Earth, it expends most of its energy just breaking gravity, or like a train when it getting started. Like you see all the work and it's just barely moving. And it's
Yeah,
always that beginning part of momentum that's so hard building it up. But then once it's going, it's next to impossible to stop. So I think with momentum, it's kind of small actions. Like I'm such a fan of incorporating things that I can do every day. So I think that kind of comes with the writing down everything I'm doing and prioritizing. So then those things that are most important, I can make sure I do those every day. And then when those are done, just be okay with the day. I think right now where I am, why I feel like I'm spinning my wheels is because I don't know what is enough.
yeah, that's a hard question though. It is. That's difficult because you don't know, even if you're getting the main things done, you don't know whether or not you should have done more. And that question is challenging to work out. And it's something you
Mm-hmm.
just have to work out. You have to kind of pick and decide and then go from there. Do I have more time? Do a little extra. I think that's one way to do it too, is like, you can always do a little more maybe, but still have your day. I like that too though, because you get those main things done. The rest of the day is sort of yours. So you're still preserving time for other activities that are important to you, like taking walks, right? Reflecting, whatever. And I think that's a smart way to look at it. That helps for sure. And I like the idea of momentum too. Yeah, I mean the spaceships, it's like in the first 2 seconds they like waste like 80% of their fuel or something insane. I forget what the number is, but it's a lot. Yeah, it's interesting. Momentum is tough though too, I think, because when people are really stuck, it can be very hard to even feel like you have any direction to go to start the momentum. So I think sometimes like maybe writing down goals, um, even just trying to start anything that is something you want to do, like exercising or something, because all these little things do, I think, add up, and you do see improvement over time. You don't always notice it at first, but all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I am doing better. Like this is at least
Mm-hmm.
better than where I was, so that's better than something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that works.
And also, I would say, like being patient and having some perspective, like optimistic, but because we want everything to happen so quickly. And I know I'm 100% guilty like this. Like I just made a drastic change in my life within 2 months. Okay.
Yeah.
And I want everything to be perfect already. And it took me a long time to get to that perfect area, but I wanted to be there now. And so having some patience and having some optimism, knowing that it will turn out. Like I always remember Wim Hof when he was interviewed by Tim Ferriss, and Tim Ferriss asked him, he's like, what do you wish you could tell your younger self? And he said, have faith.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, when you look back at it, like everything that we wanted to do, it pretty much worked out. Like I literally remember I was studying physics in undergrad and having a terrible time of it. And I was talking with one of my roommates, Ralph Edward Heacock Jr. And he was like, man, all I want in life is a sweet house in SoCal, a beautiful wife, and Land Rover Defender. And I was like, you know what I want? I just want to be a veterinarian. And then once I'm a veterinarian, everything will be fine. And it's like, I was so far off, but it happened. I got there.
Well, it's funny. It's. I think that's a good point, though, right? That like if we have a goal and we just work at it, we will generally get there. And the funny part about it too is, it's like if you have a goal and you work towards it, even the failures, you'll get somewhere good, better than where you are, as long as you put the effort in. And I think that's where a lot of people, when they're stuck, they struggle. It's not so much. It's not so much maybe even not having goals, but not putting any effort in, not taking any action. And I think that can be difficult too, because when you feel stuck, you can kind of spin yourself out. I think that's where perspective is so important and patience is so important, right? To kind of shift your perspective, think differently, and even that faith. We talked about this in the episode on lying too, like that. People who do well usually have that a little bit of self deception at play because it helps them just keep motivated to do it. They're not thinking like, if you think you're going to fail, why would you start? I mean, that's one way to look at it, right? If you really believed you were going to fail, then doing the thing is pointless. So you have to believe that it's going to work because there's no other way to really motivate.
Isn't that kind of the funny thing? Is like you really never know what the outcome is going to be. Like if you believe it's going to fail, all you have to do is give up in order to kind of prove that one right.
Yeah.
But if you think you're going to get it, all you have to do is keep on trying until it actually happens. So it's like either way, you're right. It's going to happen. It's just like which one do you want?
And it's the truth, right? Either way it is. I mean, it's like it's just a matter of really getting yourself aligned with whatever one you want, and it'll happen. And I think that's the hard part. It's like we don't, failing seems so easy, I think, sometimes because it's like it ends it there, but then you're stuck again spinning your wheels. At least if you're doing something, you're progressing towards it. Yeah, it is funny. It is funny how, like, I think so many things are just hilarious about human life in general, but how much the ideas that we hold matter for shaping like our beliefs, shaping the outcomes of what we're doing. It's insane. How just like your attitude, even like a mild lie to yourself can be a way forward because it's just giving you that sort of confidence that, hey, I can do this. It'll work out in the end. I mean,
Mhm.
it's funny. It's like, I see it with like, oh my God, I see it in college kids all the time who are like, oh, I'm not going to be able to make it there. I'm like, dude, anybody can complete 4 years of college. Like, it's not at all by any stretch impossible. Just do the work and you'll do it. Like, it's not hard.
Isn't it funny that like before you accomplish something, it can seem like such a mountain, and then you actually accomplish it, and you're like, that was nothing.
We forget a lot about it looking back too, don't we? A lot of the hard parts, but the fact that it's done, right? You did accomplish it. You made it through. So it's like, why not? And it is amazing. I think we can do pretty much anything we want. I mean, you look at, especially like, I think one of the things I love doing is looking at, there's a podcast that I listen to on NPR. It's like Planet Money, I think, where they do How I Built This. And they do, all these stories of entrepreneurs that like had a business idea and they create a business. And when you listen to it, it's amazing because these people start literally, most of them from nothing. I mean, like literally, they don't have enough money even to do the thing, right, that they're trying to do. But it's interesting because when you listen to it, it's like really what you see consistently in every story is just the belief that this idea works, the belief that they can do it no matter what, and the willingness to keep trying, even in the face of like really difficult obstacles, adversity, and potentially losing everything. And I think that is like there is something there where like, and it's unfortunate because we all don't feel this way all the time, but like that idea that this is so important that it's worth failing because at least if I fail, I know I tried. That whole idea. And I think for a lot of us, maybe we don't always feel that way about what we're doing, where that is a, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like where the,
I think you should say that again because that is actually such a crucial mind. That's a brilliant mindset to
yeah,
have.
right. Yeah, that idea, like, like we, that it's so worth doing this, even if I fail, because at least I tried doing it. And it's so important to me that I need to try, right? And I think you see that in all of these entrepreneurs, and it's amazing because it's like that really is like that's it, right? Finding that thing is ideal. And granted, they're really passionate about it, and we all wish we could be passionate like that about something. But I think you can look at your life that way, right?
Hmm.
I want to try in my life just because even if I fail, at least I try. And I think that's a good way to look at life.
That is like, oof, I'm gonna write that down when we're done this because that is like so good. Like that puts everything into perspective, I think, for me. Because I've been like working hard and it's like it feels like I'm spinning my wheels because I'm learning something new and it seems overwhelming and yada yada yada. But it's like that mindset that because I want this thing so badly. And it's like that mindset that even if I fail, it's 100% worth it because it's what I want to do and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, right. It doesn't because there's no. What else would you? I mean, that's one way to say it too. Is like, what else would you do? Like, if it's that important, there's nothing else to do anyway. You might as well do it because it's gonna be with you always. And it's funny. There was a couple. I wish I could remember the person who said one of the individuals said it really well. But like they're like, because there was points where like they were had almost lost everything, like their house was double mortgage and stuff, and they were like, why did you keep going? They were just like, well, I thought it was a good idea. Like it just had, and ultimately it worked out, right? But like it also shows you too, like, I think listening to it is helpful too, because like no success is immediate and overnight. It takes a ton of work, like just a ton of work, whether you're working on yourself or whether it's a business endeavor or whether it's a project, whatever it is, everything does take effort and take work. And it's like that part of it, I think, is also important that, you have to put in the effort to get the end result, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So we got
Wow.
believing in ourselves. Yeah. I think that's a good one, though.
That was like a mic drop moment. Definitely. Just like,
I like that one. It's an important point though, and it helps because I think we forget that a lot, and we don't think about that's again the knowing what really matters, right? What really matters to us is worth pursuing in that way because we would, regret it. Like if you look on your deathbed, would you
that's a
look back
great
and be like,
question for if you're stuck. Like, what what would you do such that even if you failed, it would be worthwhile? What could you do
that you would
such
be
that even if
happy
you
just
failed?
having done it? Yeah.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter
Yeah,
whether you succeed or not. It doesn't matter what happens. Just that you did it. You gave it your all. And another way to even phrase that is, I think another way to look at that too, because sometimes when I'm trying to figure out value, I do this. Is I imagine like, you know, if I knew I was going to die tomorrow, right? What regrets would I have? What would be the immediate set of regrets? Because those also point to things that, I do really value, whether I'm pursuing them or not. Whether it's like, I would have regretted that I didn't spend enough time with so and so or with these people, or I would have regretted that I didn't try writing that book or I didn't try doing this or whatever, it can give you some, at least, I think, a helpful ways to sort of steer yourself to go in the right direction and maybe find that thing that is worthwhile.
hmm, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. Yeah, because we got to remember, it's so funny that we have to live in these paradoxes. Like on the one hand, we're not going to live forever, but on the other
Yeah.
hand, we have to be patient because stuff doesn't happen overnight. And it's like you have to kind of balance yourself between those two.
Yeah, it is funny. It's like, well, we are just a set of paradoxes and like contradictions. And it's funny too that we all want things to happen so fast. But man, if it was like 200 years ago, stuff didn't happen at all this quickly. Oh my God, it would take like a million times longer to do anything. So at the same time, it's like it is happening very fast, but we're just used to it and we want it faster now. Just like we
Mm-hmm.
want those packages to come the second you hit purchase.
Right?
The fleet of drones. That'll
Yeah.
happen soon. Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh, another thing that I wanted to mention for when you're stuck is ask for help.
Oh,
Like for instance, we were just brainstorming for episode ideas, and I was just telling you that I feel kind of stuck. And now I don't feel stuck anymore, but it was because I was kind of able to ask for help.
yeah.
And I know even times like previously where I've worked with a counselor and said, "Hey, I'm stuck," and she was able to help me get unstuck.
It's funny too. I think about that too. I think people don't realize too when you ask for help, not like 99% of the time, the other person probably is more or less feeling the same thing at the same. You know what I mean? Like most people, I find do have these feelings and thoughts often, right? Because it's hard to know. It's like you look at the world and you see all these examples of people say that, like, I don't know, I'm 39. So I'll just say people that are 39. I can look out and I can see all these examples of people that are 39 doing differently in the world. And so it's like, where am I supposed to be? Right. And I think that's one of the problems. So, when you ask others, it's really helpful because you get that perspective, but you also get ideas to kind of move through it and hopefully find a way past being stuck or whatever problem you're facing. That's a good one. Yeah.
Hmm.
That always helps.
Yeah.
Do you have anything
Well,
else
I
you want to add?
I
Or
think you crushed it with what would be worth doing, such that even if you failed, it was worth it. I think you
thank you.
crushed
I
it.
like that one.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm glad
definitely.
this helped too, because I think it always helps, man. I always feel better after we do this. All
Hmm.
right. Well,
Sweet.
that's it for yeah. What's so this was 34, right? Yeah. Episode 34.
Hmm.
Man, we are moving through them. So, yeah, so episode 34, spinning your wheels, how to get unstuck. If you're listening, on the podcast, please check us out on YouTube. If you're, checking us out on YouTube, check out the podcast as well for additional episodes and stuff. Please like and share this and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And we will be back midweek with a short, quick fix where we cover, one topic, one self-help topic. We'll each give some suggestions for how to work through that. So until then, I'm Danny.
I'm Randy.
See you later.
Later.